Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
Welcome, everybody, to the glorious episode of the Student Body Right USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and as always, I am podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful, kind of a June gloom day, I guess, out here in Southern California. SBR is my Twitter handle, and then you can always catch us all. Just look in the summary of the show. You can see all the ways to contact the show and everything like that. And then please. Comments, questions, all that stuff, please keep them coming to the show, because before you know it, we're in the middle of June, and next thing you know, it'll be game one against San Jose State. I have Evan Desai on, sportswriter, used to write by USC, writes about all kind of things now, but still has that heart in with the Trojans here. Evan, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm chilling. Excited for the season. It'll be here soon enough. Fall camp will be here soon enough. I can tell you that.
I'm not, and I want to enjoy it. Because I'm kind of just enjoying what they're doing in this off season. So like, they can take their time. If they're gonna keep recruiting like this, take your time. Take your time, bro. Take your time. With a lot to go over with you. Let's just talk about first the media deal. The media deal that the Pac-12 can't seem to get a grasp on. It must be hard to sell football. That just seems like a weird concept to me. Especially with all this legalized betting all over the world, all over the country. Where do you think they end up? We can sit there and like laugh at like the CW or whatever, but like that might be a good spot for them, to be honest with you, because it's on almost every cable network, and you don't have to be on streaming, because I think that's where they want to avoid the embarrassment of being on just a streaming service.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of funny when you heard the CW stuff, but that just shows you how much of a hole the Pac-12 was in due to obviously the last deal, because going to CW was just a huge upgrade, just because, like you mentioned, it's going to be on the screens of most people. And that's obviously important too in a situation where you're trying to advertise Pac-12 after dark. You're trying to make that a big tradition. If people on the East Coast and all that can't really be a part of that because your product isn't really available to them, that's obviously a huge issue. For them, I think they just got to kind of figure it out soon. And that's kind of why there's a lot of pressure, and there's kind of resorting to these, kind of last resort options. Because I saw there was a Washington State president. He said like, it's a 7 out of 10 chance they're going to get the deal done or something like that, or get the deal done within the next month or something like that. And it's like,
7 out of 10
quickly on these things, 7 out of 10. I don't really know what that really means. Like, it kind of makes me laugh, but at the same time, it's like, maybe that's a step up, because there have been some times in the past about a year or so where the Pac-12 just seemed to have had zero idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. But it's concerning for the Pac-12, is you got to move really quickly, because as we've seen in the Power 5, things when it comes to conference realignment, things like that do move really fast. That's why Texas, Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, they had to move really fast. So the Pac-12 just got to figure it out soon, and they got to at least get something together, because they really want to stay together, it seems like, but it's not going to happen unless they move quickly.
Yeah, no question about it. And it seems like they're in a situation here as well where, they could make this deal, and then Oregon and Washington are just waiting to see how this whole thing plays out, maybe for season one with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. And maybe the Big Ten says, okay, we had a schedule for 2 years. We do need more of a West Coast presence. Let's add these two squads here. Or maybe or maybe as bad as Cal is, maybe they want that market, because the Bay Area market is better than the Oregon and the Washington market. So they'll take any of it right now.
Oh, no question. I actually saw apparently the Big 12. You see reports on this stuff all the time. You never know what's really happening, what's really close to happening. But I know the Big 12 recently, there's a report they expressed interest in Arizona and Colorado. So that's kind of might be a little bit of a slap in the face to Washington, Oregon. But you could also see it as maybe, Washington, Oregon don't want to go with the Big 12. And like you said, they themselves want to wait a year and, see if they can join the Big 10 or whatever. But, schools like Colorado, obviously with a lot of kind of noise right now, they're already bringing in a lot of eyeballs. We saw the spring game this offseason about a month ago. And Arizona's obviously got a big basketball brand. So I think that the interest there is probably mutual because they want to get something done. But I do think there is kind of that desire from the Pac-12 to stay together. I know that was what they want to do at first. But, it's been a struggle, and it might come down to what the other conferences want to do and not so much what the schools themselves want to do, because they may just have to move when it's all said and done.
Yeah, you mentioned Colorado. I had a writer from Athlon Sports. His name is escaping me now. He's a great guy, and he covers the Buffaloes. What are your expectations for the Buffaloes? I got to shout out USC fans too, because all my shows that get the least amount of views are the ones where I preview another opponent of the Pac-12. Y'all don't want to hear about nothing but USC. It's so funny, but I give you props for that. Thank you for watching and listening. But your thoughts about like are the Buffaloes? I mean, what's realistic? Because I know Dion is there, and I know they're. I mean, Joel Klatt is acting like they're almost a player away from national championship contention. But of course, he's a big time alum. What are your thoughts about the Buffaloes?
So it's kind of complicated because on one hand, I get the excitement. Obviously, everyone talks about the roster overhaul and everything, but the thing that's tough is that right after that spring game where I thought they really built a lot of momentum, you saw guys obviously enter the portal. Still, that tight end, I believe, is still out in the portal, but a lot of them are already even, gone, signed with other programs. And so you're starting to see maybe the grass wasn't exactly greener. A lot of these kids are kind of starting to realize that. And it's a situation where even if they were able to keep all the guys that they had and bring in all those transfers, as we've talked about, it's a much different beast when you're Lincoln Riley or Sonny Dykes taking over USC and TCU, bringing them into playoff contention versus Colorado, just trying to even bring them up to, 8-4 type of territory. It's a different program.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders isn't as experienced as a coach as a guy like Lincoln Riley or Sonny Dykes or even Brian Kelly, what he did at LSU. I mean, it's just, to be honest, my expectations, when you ask about that, I expect them to be 4-8.
Yeah,
I thought that was a great improvement. I was optimistic about Colorado, thinking they would go 4-8, but just kind of gotten out of control. They're getting talked about on every national show, and I'm happy for them, of course. Yeah. But, I just feel like that's going to set the stage for kind of disappointment that doesn't need to be there. If Deion Sanders goes 4-8 in his first year as a Power 5 head coach, from what he inherited with that program, basically telling everyone to get lost, I think that's a great improvement.
Yeah, I mean, they were by far and away the worst. And Colorado is a really good sports state. Denver, Colorado is a really good sports town. You see the Nuggets. They made the crowd they've had for the Nuggets has been there. As a Laker fan, it's been there forever. So it's not just this year. They've been a great crowd, and you all know about the Broncos as well. So the defense, I mean, I hate to just ignore Caleb. I hate to just ignore Dorian Singer and all this and these offensive linemen. I love Emmanuel Pregnon, came from Wyoming. I'm not ignoring them, and I get people in my DMs always say you're ignoring the offense, but this team is only going to go as far as the defensive unit. They have gotten a lot of really good players in the system. I think there's going to be some situations here where you look at a guy like Jamil Muhammad. I think he's going to have a big year rushing the passer. It seems when you're a play caller and you're playing from ahead, it seems like that would be something that Alex Grinch should be able to take advantage of this season.
No question. I mean, I feel like he's got options, which I don't think he had last year. What I mean by that is, like, for instance, you mentioned Jamil Muhammad, and he wasn't even one of like the best of the best defensive transfers that they got in this year, But obviously, like, when you look at his numbers against Power 5 teams, they didn't like dip like you see with some Group of 5 players. And he's obviously way better than the depth that we had last year, and obviously he's been making noise in practice and everything. He can really be a force. You got Anthony Lucas, who I think can play multiple positions on the defensive line. I think he could even play rush end just due to his athleticism. Jack Sullivan's already proven he can play, and everyone says, oh, well, USC can't play in the Big Ten. Jack Sullivan's already balled out in the Big Ten, And bringing in Kyon Barrs, that's size, needed size. Beryl Alexander, I don't really need to give him any sort of introduction. I mean, we're talking about size, he's got it. We're talking about performance, he's got it. Talking about he's got it. 2 sacks in the national championship game as a true freshman, So I just think he's got options. And, even on, like, for instance, like the defensive tackle positions, like Tyrone Taleni was the AP second team all Pac-12 selection. Like, he can play. So, like, you're looking at those types of guys as depth. That's the type of depth pieces you want. And even at linebacker, everyone panics about linebacker. Eric Gentry should be good to go. He'll probably I would personally play him at Mike, and I'd play Mason Cobb at Will, but you can't go wrong with either one of those choices.
Yep.
Flipping which side they line up on. Yeah,
Rajon Davis is a guy who everybody was wanting to see play, and when he played, he balled. So, and then,
no question.
yeah, no question about it. I think also too is like talking about linebackers like Shane Lee. I don't want to unless it's a rundown. I kind of don't want to see 53 on the field.
I feel that, but I think that that's a situation where now Alex Grinch can play him when he wants to, and
Yes.
doesn't have to play him on snaps he doesn't want to. Now that he's got, I mean, he can even play Tackett Curtis. He can play Tackett Curtis anywhere, honestly, with the type of player he is, type of athleticism he has. He certainly can cover, in pass coverage. So again, I just think that the depth is looking a lot better when you actually see it all laid out post the recruiting class and everything than what you had before. And it's actually pretty encouraging, even in defensive backfield. I think there's some good pieces there, a lot of talent there. Even though that's kind of seen as, a position group that's got some holes, there's a ton of talent, and people forget the Zion Branch is coming back. So, I mean, yeah, it definitely goes as far as defense goes. I just will say that while I was very disappointed about last year, and you were too and everything, I think that the roster on defense, it at least has more options. And I think that they've given Alex Grinch a chance to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, here's my question to you: is if this is like, just let's say they get through that first bunch of games, but it's really the defense is not giving them the answers. Is that a possibility? I mean, could they do something during the season? And because or this is they're gonna give him this season regardless.
I think they're going to give him the season regardless, partly because I just don't think they have anybody who can kind of step up in that situation and be a defensive coordinator halfway through, whatever it is. I mean, man, like, to me, the answer would be Dante. He has head coaching experience, and I just don't necessarily know that he's ready to just switch mid-season to a defensive coordinator. I mean, I remember when he was, he did his best trying to be the interim head coach. Yeah. But, it was really tough for a first-year guy to do that. And, it was kind of looked like a odd move to fire Clay Helton after 2 games instead of just before the season and that whole, disaster and everything. So I think I would just go with him the whole year. I think you have to. And I think you have to hope that he's going to improve as the season goes on. Guys are going to gel together as the season goes on and try to get better that way.
Yeah, hopefully that can happen. So I'm looking at this recruiting class here, man, and it is just in the 2024, you got Atlanta, Georgia here, you got California here, obviously, you got Oregon, you got Florida, you got Texas, you got Connecticut, my old stomping grounds. I mean, this is really going to be this national approach. I think this is what people expected, and this is what people are really kind of maybe even worried about if you're worried about USC really kind of rekindling what Pete Carroll did.
Absolutely. I feel like that's why everyone kept throwing that name around on that day when it happened, or on those, I guess, 2 days when those 6 commitments happened. You heard Pete Carroll all the time because, like you talked about national recruiting, USC, during the back half of the Helton era was having a tough time locally recruiting,
Yep.
And so I know that USC's class right now is not great for this upcoming year, but obviously it's, only June 11th and it's a good class. And it's really just a big deal because even recently, there have been so many toss-ups that USC hasn't gotten. Josh Connerly, toss-up, didn't get him. Yep. Brent Smawigoa, toss-up, didn't get him. Lucas Simmons, Roderick Pleasant, Mateo Youngole. I can name, there were some that they got, like Deuce Robinson, Walker Lyons, but, there's also Caleb Longwood. There were a ton of players that USC was in it, and you were hoping it looked like that was going to be the spot for the kid, and then all of a sudden you're hearing that he's really not going to go there. Maybe you thought he was, and signing day he doesn't go there. That was not the case at all this past weekend. This was a bunch of visits for guys that weren't really supposed to go to USC.
Yes.
Tete was supposed to go to Florida State. Cameron Fountain, I think the entire state of Tennessee already thought Cameron Fountain was signed to Tennessee or something like that. Because, I mean, the backlash that he got from Tennessee fans, but he didn't go there. He committed to USC. These guys were not supposed to go to USC. A lot of fans probably didn't even know these names because they weren't even on their radar, Yeah. That's how big of a weekend this was. I don't think we had that last year, so that's why I know the class, like I said, it's still second in the Pac-12. It has a high average recruit ranking, but it's not necessarily what we were expecting at this point, potentially, for Lincoln Riley in year 2. But when you take a look at the momentum that you take a look at what he established he can do in just one recruiting weekend, there apparently might still be some silent commits that are already committed to USC when you count up the fight on emojis and all that.
Yeah.
So it really goes to show what Lincoln Riley's capable of this recruiting cycle.
No question about it here. I don't think we talked about it because we haven't talked in a while, but we talked about the whole Mike Bones situation. I mean, that was really took everybody by surprise. It seemed like it was just like, okay, you know, it's here, here we go again. But like, I mean, they didn't. I think the old school USC might have tried to cover this up because he delivered in so many different ways. I mean, Stankiewicz, two basketball programs, and Lincoln Riley. Maybe the warning sign could have been Brendan Sursa leaving for the NFL. Who knows? But what are your thoughts about him and like where, like how, what should they do at the athletic director position?
So yeah, I think it was just kind of an unfortunate situation, really overall. Just number one, apparently there likely was some health issues that were involved. We're hearing a little bit, but also, there are some issues with him acting inappropriately and everything. And it's tough because I believe they were saying it happened at Cincinnati, so it wasn't at USC. So it was like that whole situation is messy on, didn't happen at USC, but maybe USC could have done a better job vetting that.
Yeah.
But then Cincinnati didn't know about it. Just the whole thing felt like a mess to me. The one good thing I will say is that this was done by Carol Folt. She noticed something. She did the investigation. She decided with him they were going to part ways. So I think that it was good to have. I thought that she did show some good leadership in how she ended it. I think as far as moving forward with the athletic director spot, obviously Brandon Sosno would be my first choice, but that's very likely not going to even have a chance.
And I think I know a lot of USC fans want him back, and want him to do it. But I think guys don't usually come back to college football when they have a taste of the NFL. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think that's a kind of a pipe dream for most fans.
Yeah, no question. So it's just kind of tough, but you want somebody with experience. But the issue is if they already have experience, they're probably working a good job right now.
Exactly.
They don't necessarily want to leave that. Yeah. So it's tough. You got to kind of find, another Mike Bone minus obviously is off the, out of the office issues and all that. So it's going to be difficult for sure. But like you said, this isn't old USC anymore. I do think they'll be able to figure it out. And I think that there have been times where Carol Folt's kind of been doubted and how much she cares about sports and everything. She's kind of come through in every situation, hiring Lincoln Riley. You're seeing just the athletic department doing well in general right now with, being able to get number one recruits for both men's and women's basketball in the same cycle. Baseball is at least getting better. Football is obviously on a very high trajectory. Things are going the right way. Beach volleyball won the title. I do think they'll figure this out. My dilemma is it's going to be tough to find someone with experience who wants to leave.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, you might be looking at somebody's assistant athletic director who comes with a high regard or whatever. Just don't want to see. I mean, I don't. Let's not do old school. Let's not do Pat Hayden again. Let's not do Lynn Swan again. Let's not do. I love Matt Leinart, but keep him on Fox. He does a great job representing USC there. I don't want to see stuff like that happen as well. So we'll see what happens in the future with that. We talked about it before I pressed record on the show. It takes like 2 years for a schedule to be made or something like that for college football. But like, when in the Lord's name did Georgia come up with this schedule? I mean, that was probably one of the worst schedules I've ever seen in my entire life. I gotta, I'll get your thoughts on it, and then I gotta go ahead and read it off to the fans.
No, yeah, I said the same thing. All I'll say is it's a good year for Georgia to be breaking in a new quarterback because it's gonna be pretty easy to kind of get settled in. We've seen this. We've seen the whole SEC thing where they schedule an FCS team in the middle of November and everything. We've seen that type of stuff. But I don't know what to tell you. I mean, all I'm going to say is I hope when they're making the rankings for Georgia, whatever type of season they have, that they actually factor in how tough the schedule itself is and not just say, oh, they're in the best conference, so we got to rank them first, or we got to rank them over this team, that team. Because, I mean, that schedule is just a joke. I don't see any losses except like maybe one. I believe they got Tennessee on the road, I think. Maybe that's an opportunity for them to lose, but I could also see them easily winning it,
UT Martin, you got Ball State, the fake USC, South Carolina. UAB, at Auburn. So Auburn is improved, but I don't know if they're on that level. So we'll see. Kentucky, uh, at Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, and then you got at Tennessee and at Georgia Tech. So
Yeah, one loss max is
I
what
mean,
I'm
one loss max. I mean, it's almost like it's some of these. If it's almost like and like you basically, if you're looking at some of these older schedule, some of these other schedules, other games on the schedule, if any of these games are close, you have to say to yourself, they're not worthy. They're not worthy of going where they got to go. So it's interesting to see what happens with Georgia. One more thing about the SEC, Nick Saban, the gift that keeps on giving. What are your thoughts about his woe is me? I said in the Nick Saban episode that I did on this podcast that Nick Saban is woe is me, just don't look at me, because what he actually does is totally different than what he's talking about as far as his woe is me attitude about what's going on with NIL.
No, I mean, it just kind of reminds me, it's like are we really going to do this again type of situation? Because I thought we just did this a year ago, and I thought that his apprentice and Jimbo Fisher just goes off on him and basically, tells the world like, yeah, this dude's been cheating. If you look at his real track record, I mean, there's quite a bit of dirt behind him. And I'm not trying to disrespect him or anything like that. He's, if not the greatest college football coach of all time, certainly one of them. And I mean, I understand that it's not just him that's out there cheating. But this narrative that he tries to push against other teams like A&M and like, for instance, this time USC and all that, buddy, I don't exactly know. I don't think you get how this works. I think you're just trying to run with narratives. Like USC's NIL collective, USC has been very behind on NIL. That was before we learned about Mike Bones' out of office issues. His biggest issue was being behind on NIL. Yeah. I don't know where he's getting USC from. It's like he's talking to like, maybe he's talking to Oklahoma fans or something like that. I have no idea. Like, I don't know where this is coming from with his whole NIL thing. I certainly wouldn't classify Alabama as a team that's just not trying to go after NIL or anything. Like if Dabo wanted to say that, and he does say stuff like that, he kind of has been stayed a little bit true to the whole anti-transfer thing and all that.
Yeah.
Nick Saban, I don't really know where this is coming from, so I just don't really get it, but. He's getting a little bit older. It is what it is, and hopefully he just kind of comes to his senses.
Yeah, something else. The 2000, it is kind of cool. USC. First of all, USC's social media game is just fire. Like the last video they did about the best in California stays in California. That I don't know if you've seen that video yet, but on their Twitter, it's pretty. It was lit. I mean, just goosebumps with some of that stuff that they're putting out. But they do as they go to the Big Ten 2024. That schedule was out, and then you have they play Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Maryland, Northwestern, UCLA. Obviously, they get to keep running their rivals, and then they go to Purdue, and then Penn State. Kind of be interesting to see how they play some of these games. What are your thoughts about first of all, as a fan, like what if you had a blank, somebody gave you a blank check and said, what game did you want to go to? What game would you go to? But like as far as the logistics go, what's the thing that USC has to be concerned with as far as this new trek into Big Ten country?
I think the concern would really just be, as we talked about last year when the move was announced to the Big Ten. I think it's just going to be a lot about travel. I do think, the Big Ten is going to try to be, mindful of that. But, I mean, realistically, it's just going to be harder for USC and UCLA to travel, with them being so far away. But, I also think that, there are some treks in the Big Ten that are pretty tough for certain schools. Like, I don't think it's easy for, Maryland or Rutgers to go to Nebraska or, to go to Minnesota. Like, stuff happens, I think that it's going to be really important to kind of lock in year one because you're not going to have experience taking those types of trips, 6 times a year. Yeah. And, I think that, you're going to have to really try to stay focused. Like, I know, I live by ASU. I went to ASU. What they would do is, I know they had, a hotel they would go to before even every home game. Just kind of, try to, stay together, not get in trouble off the field, stuff like that. It's just going to be really about focus because it's going to be tough because, some schools like Penn State, you might have to fly to Baltimore or something like that and then take a bus to get to Penn State.
It's not.
That stuff.
Yes, yes, very true,
So
very
it's
true, very true.
difficult. It's going to be about focus. That's going to come down to discipline.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I was thinking about too. Is like some of these I know like flying into like who's I mean Wisconsin like where like Wisconsin is that near is that really is Madison, how far is that from the airport in Green Bay, like you know what I mean not Green Bay, Milwaukee, like it's going to be interesting to see you know how that whole thing works, but they I mean listen, for all that TV money they'll figure it out, they'll figure it out, and that Los Angeles market is going to be big for them as well. So I mean, it just makes. I mean, I just can't like especially with them doing it in a year where it's going to be the expanded playoff where you can have two losses, like you know what I mean. It's okay to have a couple of losses, um, and you can still have a chance to make the playoffs. So that'll be fun to see. But I'm looking at the schedule and it just look. I mean, this is going to be some fun games. Just seeing the helmet of knowing that next year the helmet of Michigan and USC, they're gonna come to the. I mean, that game hasn't tickets haven't been sold, but it's already sold out. It's gonna be 100,000 people in that thing here though, as far as that goes. Just for next year, real quick, and I just want to see like what you think. Is like who do you think they're gonna roll out at quarterback next year? I mean, does Mal? I mean, I think people went a little overboard with Malachi Nelson in the spring game. I'm like, dude, it's a spring game. Like, I mean, the people are going crazy about Manning's the Manning kid on Texas in the spring game. And what do you guys think? Is going to be Joe Montana the first game? I mean, the first game he ever played in college. And not even a game; it's just a practice game. But Miller Moss is still there. No, I mean, it's another year where he's going to know the offense, sit back. I'm hoping to see a lot. I'm hoping to see both of those guys at some point. See both of those guys play this year because I want to see, especially in those first 3 or 4 games. I want to see some lopsided scores where the third quarter is Caleb Williams on the bench laughing with his teammates.
No question. I mean, that's going to be the goal, to be able to see those guys play early in the season, and then hopefully in that kind of,
Mop up.
how to say it. I don't know how to say it without being disrespectful, but that kind of easier matchup against Cal at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Those are the times you want to see those guys play. And I mean, yeah, about the spring game, I'm not worried about Malachi's performance in the spring game. I mean, he's here early, so it's not even just like, oh, he's just out of high school, whatever. Like, he's here early. Even he didn't go to prom and all that stuff. He went to go play in the spring game. So I'm not really too worried about that. The only concern I would have with him isn't even really a concern. It's just that everyone assumed that he was like some elite thrower and runner in high school. And then against some of the more athletic defenses in high school, he wasn't as great of a runner, but that doesn't really matter. Baker Mayfield wasn't an elite runner. He still put up crazy numbers in this offense, won a Heisman, almost went to the national championship. So, I mean, I'm not worried about Malachi, but I do think Miller will start next year. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but I think he will. I think he's going to have 3 years of college experience under his belt. He's going to have 2 learning under Lincoln Riley, who's the best quarterback whisperer in the country, and Caleb Williams, who's the best quarterback in the country. I think he's going to be ready. Again, I don't think you need to have elite mobile ability to succeed in this offense. I think we've seen it. Yeah. And I like what Miller Moss has done when he's gotten the opportunity. He hasn't gotten too many opportunities, but he's done well. I know people are going to say, oh, it's all screen passes. Like, sure, but there are also certain fundamentals you look for in short passes, in screen passes, and he has a perfect touch. I like what we've seen from him, and I do think he'll start week 1 against LSU 2024.
Last thing, they lost out on Dylan Raiola, and I'll say this about Dylan Raiola: he will be when he's done at Georgia. And listen, if you lose a player to Georgia, I would have felt bad if they lost him to Nebraska, but if they lose him to Georgia, I can live with it. But I think he'll be the best quarterback to ever play there. I usually don't go crazy about high school kids, but like he's that good of a guy, good of an athlete, that good of a quarterback. Elijah Brown is the next one up, right? So everybody has him like he has right now. He has Stanford on the list, and I would say like as like a crystal ball. I would say one thing: ignore the crystal balls because we see all the crystal balls have been terrible, especially with USC guys. I'd have to say this: he might feel some kind of way that USC went to Raiola over going with him. So maybe he's making him work for it. But let me see him actually be under center for the Cardinal. Let me just see that actually take place because I don't think there's any way that kid that talented is going to go to Stanford to play football.
No, I mean, I feel that because it's also a situation where you got to keep the commitment as well. And I mean, I remember I was on this show with you, and we had to talk about how all these people are making up these crazy rumors and dreams about how Malachi Nelson was going to go to Texas A&M last year.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know, a 5-7 Texas A&M team. Like, you know, you got to keep the commitment. So even a guy like Malachi Nelson, who seemed very set in going to USC, of course, is going to take a visit to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
They're having this big pool party that they talk about and everything. He's seen all these great players commit. Who's to say Elijah Brown, maybe he commits to Stanford, but ends up seeing a bunch of great players continuing to come to USC, which he's already starting to see right now, and may see next week with the visits that happened this weekend that, you know, I guess just ended now. That stuff could easily happen. You could take an in-season visit. USC didn't really flip anybody last year, but there were schools that did flip a lot of players last year. You know, Oregon was obviously a school in the Pac-12 that flipped a lot of players in early signing day last year. So, yeah, obviously he's definitely leaning much more towards Stanford than USC right now. Maybe he does feel slighted. They went over Raiola first. They went to Raiola first before him, but Raiola is not too far away from USC either, out in Phoenix. So, you know, I think that, like you mentioned, first, let's not, you know, overreact to anything or try to go after some copium about losing a player until you see him sign. But I will just also say, just in general, there are great quarterbacks in the portal seemingly every year. Lincoln Riley has the best track record of anybody about bringing them in and apparently bringing them into Heisman type of players. So I'm not too worried about quarterback.
Yeah, and I want to say one thing about Caleb Williams, who, like, you know, have a whole USC show. I don't mention Caleb Williams, but I think there are times in Caleb, it could be sometimes Caleb when he does go running around, that sometimes those plays are maybe he doesn't want to squeeze the ball in that situation, and he just takes off. Like, you know, we don't know unless you watch the all 22. Like, it's hard to get access of it, so I do. Don't tell nobody. But sometimes the ball could be out, but he just says, I have that ability to go run. Like, another quarterback might just get the ball out. Like, you know, Miller Moss or Malachi Nelson might get the ball out and then dump it down to some of these superior athletes. But some of these that running back, was it Tatum, that running back? Everybody's talking about too. I'm excited about Lloyd this year. I mean, they have a lot. This team is pretty, like, they're going to be an angry bunch, I think, this year. I really feel like they're going to be an angry bunch, and people are going to have a hard time dealing with the Trojans here, as far as that goes. All right. Evan Desai, always a pleasure to have you on, man. Anything else you want to add before you go?
Nah, you just you got me thinking about the running game, though. I'm excited. Even saw Marion Peterson, Quentin Joyner, you know, true freshmen going off in the spring game. So I'm excited to see that.
So you know what? Next time we get you on, we'll talk about some. We got some time. We got some time. It's June. We'll talk about the running back and running backs and what they can do in a running game here on the Student Body Right USC podcast. All right, brother. Take care. Do your thing.
Thank you. Later.